Hi everybody, it's Dr. Rose Hello. I'm a board certified naturopathic doctor specializing in women's health and hormones. And I thought it was about time that I do a video on autoimmune thyroid. It's something that has affected my life personally, and I somehow, kind of miraculously, but also with some work, have been able to put into and keep in remission for quite a while. And I have helped many of my clients actually discover that they have an autoimmune condition, and a lot of times it is thyroid related, and it is a lot of times Hashimoto's. Not all the time, but many times. I've lost track. I've really lost track. It's crazy to me how so many people have kind of been swept under the rug or dismissed or just fallen through the cracks on both the testing, or someone not understanding what their testing means, or that they need more, or that they should have their antibodies tested. So what is thyroid autoimmunity though? It really occurs when the immune system produces antibodies against your thyroid tissue, and your thyroid is a gland in your neck. So that would be like anti-TPO or anti-thyroglobulin, and that can lead to inflammation of the gland, thyroiditis. It can lead to nodules in your thyroid gland. Sometimes that can be cancer related. A lot of times it's not, so don't panic. And you can have those nodules without the autoimmune component as well. But standard labs will often show that your thyroid's a little bit off, even subclinically hypothyroid. But I just had a client whose thyroid actually tested pretty normal, but she has elevated antibodies. So, you know, this is something that we really should be looking for, I think, in everyone, because if her standard Western doctor had run a test for her on her thyroid, there would have never been a follow-up for antibodies, because she doesn't appear on paper as someone who would have an autoimmune issue going on. So I'm really glad that we just went ahead and tested it. Why not? Good to know. Good to rule out when you're not feeling well. When you've been dealing with fatigue for many, many years and you don't know why, I think it's not that expensive of a test that is so common. A so commonly overlooked condition for so many women. So why is this even relevant for you? If you're having issues with your metabolism, if you're cold all the time, like I said, if you're fatigued, if your immune system is kind of messed up, you get out everything that's going around, you have an hormonal imbalance, you know, this could be you. So again, why not rule it out? And according to Dr. Broda Barnes, who I love when it comes to thyroid research and knowledge, under-recognized low thyroid function or hypothyroidism contributes to many chronic issues, and that can be elevated cholesterol we see in a lot of people. We always called it the poor man's thyroid test. If we see cholesterol kind of out of sorts, it can impair tissue repair. So if you have a wound and it's not healing, you know, that can contribute to the problem and explain why it's not healing. And Ray Peat emphasized that many autoimmune thyroid conditions are in fact secondary to thyroid and metabolic dysfunction rather than a primary issue. So while we are testing for this and we're looking for clues to see if an autoimmune component is present here, we don't immediately just go to autoimmune being the root cause, but actually a symptom of a bigger problem, where we can continue to try to support the thyroid and metabolism with proper nutrient hormone balance, and improve the antibody and immune picture when we're doing that. So all of this goes hand in hand. And like I said, you know, there are people that fall through the cracks, like my client today, who's, I mean, even, you know, according to functional numbers, her her thyroid labs looked really good. So I was really surprised to see those antibodies a bit elevated for her. So, you know, that explains a lot though, because she's had a lot of unexplained challenges over the years, and it's been really tricky trying to get to the bottom of it for her. So this is probably another place where we can say, oh yeah, we need to continue supporting the thyroid, continue with the pro-metabolic efforts. So this is something you can ask your doctor for. If you have symptoms of thyroid issues, it should not be a problem for them to order a couple of antibody tests for you and rule something like this out. And even if you have antibodies but they aren't in the diagnostic range for, you know, saying yes, you're going to be diagnosed with this autoimmune condition, even if the numbers aren't optimal, if you have slightly elevated numbers but they're kind of in that in-between phase of like not having any but not having too many, then it's something that I would definitely keep an eye on and have tested again, you know, maybe 6 months down the road. Or anytime you have a setback with your health, probably a good idea to test those again, just to make sure that that's not something that's going on below the surface, because there are some things we can do. So what if, I know the economy is weird right now, I know health insurance is tricky for some people, you know, some people are really busy, but what if you don't have a doctor? What if you can't afford insurance? What if you have no idea? You know, you can't test for antibodies at home, but at the very minimum, you can be taking your pulse and your blood pressure, or your pulse and your body temperature, not your blood pressure, your temperature and your pulse, to see if your numbers are optimal. And if you want to know how to do that, if you want to learn how to do that, you can go get my ebook. I have a chapter on pulse and temperature testing, the way that Dr. Broda Barnes taught it and Dr. Ray Peat taught it. So you can go and do that. And you know, whether or not you have an autoimmune condition, if you're not able to get the testing, but you are not optimal with your pulse and temperature, then anything that you do to support your thyroid, whether or not you have an autoimmune condition, is going to be supportive for you, as far as all those pro-metabolic things that I talk about all the time. So what else do I want to say about this? I made some notes because I think there's just so much to talk about. But I think one of the most overlooked things, besides, you know, like making sure your nutrition is really dialed in, making sure you're getting minerals, especially magnesium, selenium, and zinc, a tiny little bit of copper to balance. Let's talk about the hormonal component. So if you're my client and you're sitting in front of me and we know that your hormones are out of whack and we know something is going on with your thyroid and there's some elevated antibodies, we want to ensure adrenal support, and we want to start working on your chronic stress. And this is something that I work on in my own life every single day. I mean, take my word for it. So, but we know that elevated cortisol and adrenaline suppress thyroid and immune regulation, bottom line. So those stress hormones, if you're not eating often enough, if you're living in fight or flight for whatever reason, the more you can do to nourish yourself, provide stable energy throughout the day, and get yourself into rest and digest, the better you're going to be supporting yourself with an autoimmune condition. And this isn't just Hashimoto's or Graves' disease or something like this. This is any autoimmune condition out there. You know, this applies to everybody. This is how our body chemistry works. We also want to evaluate your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone balance. This applies to men too, but especially for us women over 40, because estrogen dominance can suppress thyroid function and promote autoimmunity. And that is something that Ray Peat taught and said over and over again. We want to support progesterone, especially with topical, oral, vaginal, if indicated. Many of my clients are on bioidentical progesterone already, and that's never going to hurt your thyroid to do that. So just putting that out there, very safe and very supportive action to take there. And then you want to consider an anti-inflammatory, pro-repair type of lifestyle. And I think, we overlook the importance of sleep. Moderate movement, but not over exercising, can be really important for this. Sunlight or sauna, infrared sessions, if that's appropriate for your situation. Lymphatic drainage, which can support immune and thyroid health. And then, as you're doing these things, just continue to track your basal body temperature and resting pulse weekly, and your symptoms. If you have an autoimmune condition, you probably are aware of how you've been feeling, and it's likely not great. So if your symptoms start to improve, then you can kind of know that you're going in the right direction. If your thyroid is really affected by this and you need support, see a practitioner who can test and provide the medication that you need, or talk to somebody like me if you want to try a glandular thyroid, anything like that. There are things that we can do. Ray Peat was a strong proponent of using T3, because when we use T4, sometimes those of us with impaired liver function have trouble converting T4 to T3. So, always liver support is really important for that. And then just, being consistent, I think, is the big thing. You just want to be consistent with your efforts, but the best thing you can do to figure out if this applies to you is get tested. See if somebody can test you for it. If you're one of my clients, we can most likely order that test for you, depending on where you live in the world. And we can just see if this is an issue for you or not. But I hope that this was really helpful for some of you out there. Kind of as a side note, I want to say that part of my healing, my autoimmune condition, involved using a pharmaceutical product called low-dose naltrexone, and that was really helpful for me for a short amount of time, and it has actually I've been able to go off of that, and I've kept my Hashimoto's thyroiditis in remission for quite some time now, despite quite a few stressful, traumatic events and health-related challenges. It just kind of got me going in the right direction. And while I don't prescribe and I don't tell people to take pharmaceutical drugs or anything, I always try to share that part of my story because it was so helpful for me in getting over that hump in the beginning. And there is a low-dose naltrexone, or LDN, research group out there on the internet. So if you search for it, you can find information about that. And then there are doctors online, and there are sometimes local docs who understand how to prescribe LDN, or you can print out the information and actually take it to your physician with you. My family doctor was happy to prescribe LDN according to the research that I had shared with her. And for me, it was very easy to get the prescription. My insurance did not pay for it though, because you have to get it from a compounding pharmacy. So if you go to that LDN research group online, they have lots of information about best places to get it, how to order it, who to talk to, all that information, how to use it properly and safely, all of that. But there you go. There's the naturopathic and kind of a little bit of a Western approach thrown in, because integrative medicine sometimes can be very helpful. So I hope that this was helpful for some of you. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you've ever been tested for thyroid autoimmune stuff. And if you haven't, leave a comment and let me know if you're thinking about doing it now and if you think it might apply to you. Take care.